Hey guys, Marcus Melnick here with Firearm Mentor. Hope you're enjoying my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. These little things are free to you and really help the channel. I appreciate your support. Enjoy. Thank you. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic, your host. And coming up this week is Thanksgiving. So I am thankful for all of my listeners. I'm thankful for all of my guests, including my guest today, who is Terry Moore and Ambrosia Branson. They are from a program called Circle of Care, where the lead agency is called Our House, as in time. An hour a day keeps the or apple a day keeps the doctor away. But an hour a day might keep the doctor away too if you're exercising. So that is my really poor sense of humor. So we're gonna get into it, and we're gonna find out all about your backgrounds. So if our listeners have questions on addiction, this is the show to listen to. I met Terry. She had I'll call it a booth. It was a table at the National Alliance for Mental Illness Illinois conference last month, where I spoke and I presented on how to manage agitated people to participants who were social workers in mental health, had mental health issues themselves, or have family members. And there's probably even more community-based programs that I wasn't even aware of that I presented to. So I would like to know, directed to both of you, what is your personal origin story? How did you get to where you are today, and what is your inspiration? Terry, why don't you begin?
Okay, well, I have over 30 years experience in nonprofit management. I've been mostly development and marketing directors in several nonprofits through the years, and before that, I was a substitute teacher, and I'm kind of semi-retired, but I'm not one to retire. I like to keep going, so I just applied for a job at the position at the Our House, and there was another position they thought I would fit really well in, which I'm so glad they chose me, is Circle of Care program planner, and that's how I got here.
Terrific. Ambrosia, are you a fan of sci-fi?
Of sci-fi? I don't know about that.
Well, science fiction. Science fiction is what it is.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of sci-fi before. I've heard of sci-fi movies, but I'm not sure if I watched too many of them.
Okay, so back in the 70s and then in the early 2000s, there was a show called Battlestar Galactica, and that show, the alcohol in Battlestar Galactica was called Ambrosia. So when I saw the name, yeah, I'm a nerd. So anyway, same question to you, Ambrosia. What's your personal origin story, and how'd you get to where you are today? What floats your boat? What makes you inspired?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess a little bit about me. I graduated with both my bachelor's and master's from Eastern Illinois University back in 2021 and 2022. And I was just kind of on the job hunt. Once I graduated with my master's, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in the field, and I applied for a ton of different positions and landed on one at the Our House. They offered me the job. And so I started, actually for the past 2 years, I had worked for a statewide program, which the Our House was the lead agency for the project. It's called the RUSC. It stands for Recovery Oriented Systems of Care, so ROSC. And so the Our House was the lead agency for that grant, and they cover 8 different counties, covering 6 different ROSC councils, and I served over Edgar County specifically. And so in the 2 years, my position with the ROSC, really what we aimed to do is build a community that supported people in recovery. It really opened my eyes to, the challenges that people in recovery face, as well as the amount of stigma that there is in communities towards people that are still actively using substances, as well as, people that are in recovery and who are no longer actively using. I did that position for 2 years, and then the Our House was awarded the Circle of Care grant, and I just kind of moved on into this other position with this new program. And so I'm really excited. I love all of our staff that we have on our team. We're all super excited, love the mission, I guess, behind our project and really what we're aiming to do in this wonderful program. And so I'm just really excited to be able to make a huge impact on not only kiddos' lives, but also our recovery communities.
Well, both of your passions come through. I have a couple follow-ups for Ambrosia. What did you major in? What is your what are your degrees in?
My bachelor's, I got a bachelor's in health administration, and I got a double minor in business and workplace wellness. And then my master's is in health promotion and leadership. And then I'm actually getting ready to finish up come May. I will be finishing my doctorate in health sciences.
Wow. I'm impressed.
So yeah. Well, it's just taken a long time, just lots of learning. But so my degrees are very tailored to like public health, I would say. But it's been really interesting to work in the substance use disorder field and see a whole nother realm of health, essentially.
Right. And where is Edgar County in Illinois?
Edgar County is actually on the eastern side of the state, the central eastern side of the state. So the Our House covers 8 counties there, being Clark, Cumberland, Coles, Douglas, Edgar, Effingham, Shelby, and Moultrie. The Ross Grant under the Our House covers all of those different counties. And so it's the central eastern side of the state, close to Terre Haute, Indiana. That's kind of where it's close to.
Terre Haute has a large facility for incarceration. Do you get people that are released from there in your program? That's me being curious.
In the ROSC program?
Yes.
Yeah, so with the ROSC, it was a program where we're trying to build people in the community that support people in recovery. They had people from all over, say, that would come to Paris and live there. It's just like any other community. I'm not sure personally if there were a lot of incarcerated individuals that were incarcerated over there that would come to Edgar County specifically. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that one.
Okay, that's cool. Hey, in my world, I don't know is always okay rather than make a fake answer.
Yes.
And I tell everyone that. If I don't know something, let me get back to you on that, and I write it down, and then I get back to them. I don't claim to know everything about everything. That's why we have specialists. So how does a person who is addicted to a substance, it doesn't matter what the substance is, how do they find their way to your services?
Specifically like Our House services?
Yes.
Basically, if they're in the Our House takes clients in from all over the state, but basically if someone who is still actively using was interested in going into Our House services, essentially what they would do is they would call the Our House and they would schedule an intake assessment where our intake people can assess what specific services it is that they're needing, whether it's inpatient, outpatient, whatever it is that individual needs. We do also have a stabilization and transition unit that the Our House has, which is a wonderful resource for people if they are just, maybe they potentially aren't able, there isn't a bed available for them or something at the Our House, they can get into the stabilization and transition unit and be there for a couple of days and see a recovery navigator or a peer support specialist. So someone that is in recovery and has lived experience with substance use disorder, they can see someone and they can help them navigate whatever it is that they may need at that time. But I always do like to throw in there to people as well that, the Our House is a substance use disorder treatment facility. So not only do they have clinical services, but they do have community-based programs as well, which is where kind of the circle of care comes into play. And so we have not only our clinical services, but we do have our community-based grants. So we have Circle of Care, we have our ROSC programs, we have a prevention team that goes into the schools. And then the Our House was awarded 2 newer grants as well, which is called the BASE grant and the CORES grant. So there are a couple of different community-based grants as well that cover various counties surrounding where the Our House is.
And is it one facility?
So the Hour House has several facilities. So they have the Hour House, which is like their main location in Charleston, and then they have outpatient offices. They have halfway houses. They've got a lot of different facilities that they have,
Okay.
just based on the type of service that people are getting.
And if somebody wanted to do or needed, they did an intake, they were an outpatient, but they don't live close to a facility, could this be could the support be administered via Zoom, via phone calls for counseling, that type of thing?
I think that they can do a little bit of telehealth. I'm going to be honest, I don't know the full extent of the Hour House's clinical services, just because I have been for almost the past 3 years working on the community-based grant side. But any questions that I can't answer, I would be happy to find the answers for anyone in terms of clinical support at the Hour House.
I'll segue. Can you give everyone your contact information? And spell,
Absolutely.
if it's an email, spell it, because sometimes people like me don't spell very well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, my email is Ambrosia, so AMBROSIA, and then the letter B as in Branson. So Ambrosia B at, and then HOURHOUSERECOVERY.org. So it's Ambrosia B at ourhouserecovery.org. And then if they have questions about specifically clinical services, they can always call the Hour House phone number. The Hour House phone number is 217-348-8108. But if they have any questions specifically about like community-based programs or the Circle of Care, they can contact me at 217-549-8772, or they can contact Terry as well.
Very good. Terry, can you give your contact information, please? And thank you.
My contact information is Terry, TERIM, at ourhouserecovery.org. Cell is 217-254-4826.
I want my listeners to know that this is my dream, teaching people about safety. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for my listeners, I couldn't live my dream. So on behalf of my family and myself, I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to live my dream. And I also want to continue to live my dream, and I'm excited to continue to spread the word of safety. Recently, I began a new service as a conference keynote speaker. So if anyone would like for me to speak at future events, or if anyone knows of an introduction or would like to discuss how we can work with one another, I'd love to do just that. The keynote speaking website is www.stress2logic.com. That is STRESS2logic.com. If you're aware of any conference speaking engagements where you'd like to have me speak, I'd love an introduction. You can always share my electronic business card, which is Marcus Melnick, MarcusMelnick.com. Now, back to the show. Very good. Thank you. So on the website, I found an interesting PowerPoint presentation, and I'd love for you to go through some of the numbers on how pervasive drug use is and drug overdoses are in our society. So can you address some of those statistics?
And I'll give you guys a little bit of, and Terry, at any point in time, if you want Ambrosia to stop talking, you say, hey, Ambrosia, I'm going to talk. I'm a talker, though. Terry knows I'm a talker.
You're doing great.
But, so yeah, I'll tell you guys a little bit about the Circle of Care program, just to give you guys a little bit of context. And then that kind of, I think, segues into like the data that we look at and kind of gives a reasoning behind why this project is here. So the Circle of Care, really what it is we are a 1-year statewide grant-funded project. And really what we're aiming to do in our 1 year is two different things. One thing is we're aiming to build this network of grief and substance use disorder resources for children, teens, and families who are experiencing grief and loss related to substance use-related death and disorders. So not only in this 1 year are we going to be providing resources and supports for them, but on the flip side, we're wanting to train as many of our natural helpers or people in communities that are naturally interacting with kiddos within their everyday professional lives or personal lives. So this could be, our educators that are interacting with kiddos every day. This could be people at the local YMCAs that the kiddos go to after school, or coaches that they may have, the local soccer coach, or, at our faith-based like youth groups that they have in the evenings. So we're wanting to train as many of these natural helpers, people that are naturally interacting with kids, and we want to train and equip them to feel comfortable and confident in responding to child's grief that they may be experiencing related to substance use. And so that's kind of the big, overview of our project. Looking at some of the data and kind of how this project came to be. So recently there was a study that was released. I think it was from the National Institute on Drug Abuse. But basically it was the first, I believe, federal study that was conducted that looked at the amount of children who lost a parent, or I think it was a parent, to a drug overdose in a 10-year time span. So from 2011 to 2021, essentially what the study was able to find is that approximately 321,566 children lost a parent to a drug overdose in this 10-year time span. So thinking about all of those kiddos, we question basically, how many of these kiddos do you think received the appropriate grief support that they needed? Because one of the things that we recognized with this project, and another reason basically why we're here, is that whenever children are impacted by substance use disorder, either in their family or just experiencing a loved one, maybe a family member or friend that has substance use, basically one of the things that we've recognized is that there are additional layers to that grief that they may be experiencing. So there are layers, again, of stigma. Maybe they don't want to receive resources or support because of that stigma. Maybe people, some of our natural helpers, maybe the educator or the local coach, they don't know how to talk to that kiddo that's experienced, maybe losing mom or dad to an overdose, or, maybe they're living with grandma or grandpa because although the parent hasn't passed due to substance use, they're just not physically present in that child's life due to their use. And so, that's just another huge reason why this project's here. Another statistic that I'll share that we were able to find from the National Association for Children Impacted by Addiction, I believe it is that approximately 1 in 4 children are impacted by the effects of a parent or caregiver misusing substances. So, these effects look different for every single kiddo because, again, like we recognize, substance use is just different across families if substance use is present. We were also able to pull some data from, I believe it's IDPH, so the Illinois Department of Public Health's statewide or semi-annual report that they give out specifically related to substance use. And so in the state of Illinois, we were able to see from about 2021 to 2022, there was a 5.1% increase in overdose deaths specifically. I always like to throw that out there too, just thinking about the number of kiddos who are experiencing overdose deaths in their family. We just always like to throw all of these data and statistics to people just to show the prevalence of substance use in our communities. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question at all. Sorry, I went off on a little bit of a tangent, but
if I were Jack Black, I would say nailed it. So yes, that's you answered exactly the question that I asked. I want to drill down into a couple specifics. So I'd love for you, and just to let you guys know and the listeners know, as a child, I experienced grief, not from substance abuse. My father was in hospice when I was a teenager and died when I was in college. So I certainly understand what the child grief is all about. But I want to specifically ask, does grief result not only from death, but from not being with the parent, from the seeing the parent, I'm just thinking crystal meth, losing teeth, health going down. Is that also an element of grief?
Yeah, absolutely. And so on with the Circle of Care project, which I don't know, Marcus, when you want me to get, if you want me to get into any details regarding like the different components of our project, which whenever you're ready for that, you just tell me. We have a wonderful grief consultant on our team, and she is going to be doing this huge training for us on the connection between grief and substance use disorder, and specifically how that impacts children. But one of the big things that, she talks about is, that ambiguous loss, which is essentially kind of like I was saying a little bit earlier, where a kiddo maybe hasn't lost that parent or caregiver or loved one due to substance use, but, they're just not present in their life due to that substance use. And so that's considered like ambiguous loss. They haven't lost them physically, but they are still having experiences of grief and loss due to, not having them there. They're not physically present, or they're not maybe emotionally present. So that's kind of like what that ambiguous grief and loss is. And we do cover that a lot with our project, recognizing that.
I never heard that term before, ambiguous grief. And now you've piqued my interest. I'm definitely going to be looking into it on my own, because I just find it fascinating. I have one more follow-up, and then we can do the deep dive into the other programs. So in Illinois, and it's kind of a trend throughout the nation, cannabis has been decriminalized. So when we talk about the disorder, are we talking about a substance use disorder or a substance abuse disorder? And let me clarify. There are people who will take a gummy to go to sleep because they have problems sleeping. In my world, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, that's not necessarily substance abuse, but if someone's walking around high and driving, that's abuse. What's your take on it? And I'm a layperson. I am not in the substance abuse area, so I'm speaking from a position of ignorance. Go ahead.
The only thing that I can speak to in regards to like the biggest difference between like substance use disorder and substance abuse disorder is a big thing in the like recovery or substance use recovery field is they're trying to change the language of how we say certain things. So, instead of calling someone an addict, we want to reframe that and not stigmatize that person and call it, a person living with a substance use disorder, or those people with lived experience. So those people that are in recovery now that are no longer using substances. I will say too, that, whenever someone is diagnosed with a substance use disorder, that's after they went to some type of treatment, and they're diagnosed based on the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And so they're diagnosed by, a counselor or a clinician saying that, they have a substance use disorder. So I'm not sure that I can speak to basically if someone has like a substance use problem or if they're diagnosed with a substance use disorder. It's maybe a thing of, I guess, like perception essentially. So people that go through some type of, clinical treatment, then they're diagnosed with a substance use disorder.
Okay, very good.
If that answers your question.
It does. It does. And what substances do you see being abused the most?
I would just say, based on my work with the ROSC, so again, the ROSC is a statewide grant-funded project. There are ROSC councils all over the state of Illinois. In the state of Illinois, we have about 102 counties, and I think we have ROSC councils in between 40 to 50 counties. And the substance literally depends on the community in the county that they live in. So, I would say in rural Illinois, kind of where we are, I would say, meth is very prevalent. But again, it just depends on the community. Other communities see higher rates of like opioid use. And we see, a lot of where we are is like meth and then cocaine. Some places you may see higher rates of like prescription opioids specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think it really depends on the community. And I think there's a way that they can kind of see the prevalence of substance use in their communities, or specifically, like I know overdose rates, whether they're opioid specific or non-opioid overdoses. I think that they can go on to somewhere with IDPH and they report a lot of that information.
Okay. And we're talking about illicit substances, but there are other types of addictions. And the answer might be no, which is cool. Do you do anything with tobacco addiction?
Specifically at our house, I am not 100% sure.
Okay.
I'll be really honest.
I think this next one is a no. What about food addiction?
I don't think so at our house. I think that, they specifically stick with substance use. I know that they do, and gambling, yes.
Oh,
thank
gambling.
you, Terry. Yeah, they do cover gambling.
Okay. Hey, I'm glad you said that. I'm going to segue. I'm going to share a little story. I worked with a guy when I worked at the Glencoe Police and Fire Department. And you got to understand that in public safety, our senses of humor are very warped and twisted. Mm-hmm. So this guy's last name was Bookie, and it's spelled exactly the way you think it was spelled. And so one of the guys, and they would always bet, I bet you $1 you can't swear for an hour. Just silly stuff like that. And so he would always do that, or I bet you $0.25, I bet you a cup of coffee, nothing major or anything like that. And one time someone called an addiction hotline to talk about this guy named Bookie, and they got hung up on because they thought it was a prank call. I thought that was funny. It wasn't really an addiction problem, but it was just a workplace culture thing. I thought, apparently you guys didn't think it was funny, but maybe the listeners will, which is okay. I bomb on stage all the time with my humor. So, but that really happened. When we return, we'll be continuing the conversation with Ambrosia and Terry from our house. Stay tuned. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.